welcome to Tell Us Something. Thanks for being here to support live storytelling in Missoula. My name is Marc Moss, founder and executive director of Tell Us Something, and I'll be your host this evening. This presentation is being recorded by Missoula Community Access Television as part of a media assistance grant donated to Tell Us Something by MCAT. Tonight's stories are supported in part by a grant from the Montana Arts Council, an agency of the state government. The University of Montana stands on the Aboriginal territories of the Salish and Kalispel people. We also recognize the Kootenai and the Blackfeet and the Shoshone and many other indigenous peoples who have called this place home and whose histories, cultures, and languages continue to enrich our community. As the aspens turn gold and the air grows crisp, this is a sacred time of transition. For generations, the original stewards of this valley have understood that this season is a time for the final harvests, preparing food and medicine for the coming cold, and for the last hunts before the snow, for gathering to share stories that will sustain the community through winter. This land is not a relic of the past. It is a living, breathing entity. Deeply connected to the ongoing lives and traditions of indigenous peoples. Ways that you can honor the land that we occupy and celebrate the indigenous peoples who were the first peoples here are to support indigenous artists and partake in celebration with indigenous peoples. To that end, we celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day on October 13th at the Bear Track Celebration Powwow, which opens at 2 p.m. with a grand entry and continues at Karis Park with dancers, food trucks, indigenous vendors, singers, and drummers. I hope you can make it. Some housekeeping to start us off. Remember, Tell Us Something stories sometimes have adult language. Storytellers sometimes use adult language, and sometimes there are adult themes. Thank you for joining us this evening. I know that you have many options regarding how you spend your time and money, and I am grateful that you have chosen to be here now. Tell Us Something believes that it is important to come together as a community to support storytellers in our community as they stand up and exercise their First Amendment right of free speech. Here is what you're going to experience this evening for folks that maybe have never been here. We have 8 storytellers. They each have 10 minutes to share their story from memory on the theme, Walk on the Wild Side. No notes, no PowerPoint, no props. At the 9-minute mark, I have a timekeeper. We have a timekeeper. Marissa has been our timekeeper for a long time. Can you give us the sound of the gong, please, Marissa? That means that they have 1 minute remaining. So at 9 minutes, you're going to hear that. If they go beyond 10 minutes, she'll do it again. A little louder, though. Yeah. Yeah. And then if they go really long, she'll lay into it, and I'll come up and with a hook and be like, let's go. No, I won't do that. But stories should be at 10 minutes. Some of them run just a touch long. Mine, I'm telling a story tonight, has been long, so I've been working on it. Yeah, I'm sure. So, off script, Marissa, I was telling a story at one of these events, and I was not looking at the timer, and I saw her stand up, and she was like a, and I was like, oh shit. And she laid into, it was a gong at the time, laid into that thing like her life depended on it. And it was, let's take a couple breaths together. Get grounded. do one more, and when you exhale, I want you to hum as long as you can. Ready? 1, 2, 3. It is important to actively listen to one another, join together, and support one another by sharing stories. When we do this, we can better connect with our own individual stories, with each other, and with our community. This is your community. These are your stories. The stories you hear at each Tell Us Something event are by and for members of our community. You can do this too. You can share your stories. Tell Us Something provides storyteller workshops for storytellers. Storytellers are paid for their art. The next Tell Us Something event hasn't been officially scheduled yet, so I don't know the exact date, but it will be here, hopefully, in January. And the theme is self-evident. So interpret that however you want. Our storytellers tonight have worked hard to bring you their stories. Can we all agree to give them the respect that they deserve by actively listening to them? Yeah. Please, I have to do this. Please silence your cell phones or other mobile devices if you haven't already. You came to listen. Let the listening begin. Thank you for your support of each other and of each other's stories. Tell Us Something believes that everyone has a story and everyone's story matters. Our first storyteller this evening is Rad Watkins, who asked me to read a different bio. So I'm going to pull that up. He asked me after I left the house, and I don't have a printer, so I appreciate you bearing with me as I pull up what was requested of me. I like to do what I'm told. Rad Watkins is a lifelong nature lover and conservationist based in Missoula, Montana. He currently serves as executive director of the Missoula Conservation District, where he helps lead efforts to protect local streams, wildlife, and working lands. His career has taken him from the old-growth forest of the Pacific Northwest, studying endangered seabirds, to Glacier National Park collecting grizzly bear DNA, to the north woods of Wisconsin tracking wolves and rehabbing bald eagles. Rad also loves personal development because, as he says, he needs it. He's a certified life coach who does some leadership speaking and training. Rad is the creator of the Animal Leadership Personality Test. I took it today. I'm a monkey. I don't know what that means. At home, he and his wife Gretchen and their kids Lena and Norris enjoy doing what Montanans do best: floating rivers, skiing, hiking, and spending time outdoors with their dogs and horses. Please welcome Rad Watkins.
Thank you. Blood lure is a combination of decomposed fish and cattle blood left in a barrel till it finally ages into what bear ecologists call the brew. I learned this working on a bear DNA project in Glacier National Park. During that project, we used the brew to lure in bears to hare traps, where we used barbed wire to collect DNA samples on hair follicles. We also did that by using rub trees on trails and collecting grizzly bear scat or bear scat, which is poop, as you walk along the trail and shove it into little test tubes, saying what it smelled like and what you thought they ate last. My father-in-law still likes to remind me that I used to be a poopologist. Being a poopologist is not everyone's dream job, but if you're a wildlife guy like me, working in the crown of the continent with charismatic megafauna, grizzly bears in this case, is a dream come true. The only bad part was I had to move even further from the love of my life, Gretchen. Gretchen and I met in graduate school in the UP of Michigan. She was brilliant. She was an environmental engineering master's degree student. She's beautiful, blue eyes, blonde hair. She's athletic. She liked mountain biking and snowboarding, and most importantly, didn't care what the weather was like. She liked to be outside as much as I did. So I was so smitten. But being brilliant, she graduated ahead of me. And she moved away to Vermont to go do conservation work there. And I longed to be in the Rocky Mountains. So Gretchen supported my dream job pursuit. But she was a little worried. She wasn't worried that I wouldn't come back to her, but she was worried that I wouldn't come back to her because of the blood lure and the bears. And so she bought me a little book, told me how to behave in the backcountry, how to watch out for these bears and what to do. And so as I moved from Vermont to Montana, camping along the way, I spent my nights not reading that book. That's because I went to the University of Montana. And hey, Bobcat guys, that doesn't mean we can't read. What it means is that I've done a lot of backpacking in bear habitat. And bears always ran away when I surprised them. They were gone. And if a bear did come at me, I knew what to do. I would curl up in the fetal position and play dead, which I just need to warn you guys is not what you should do. So that was a misnomer at the time. So I was a little scared hiking and camping with the blood lure, but carrying around spools of barbed wire and blood lure plus all your regular backpacking stuff off trail in the backcountry of Glacier National Park, you grew tired. Didn't matter how scared you were, you slept. Didn't worry about bears until Gretchen came to visit. I had a plan. This was her first time coming to Montana, the land that I love, the place of beautiful peaks and clean water, wild animals. My plan really needed Gretchen to stay alive. I wanted to marry her and spend the rest of my life with her. So I decided to level up and read that first chapter of the book. And it surprised me. It was like, hey, bears are basically like humans. We all do things based on how confident we are moving forward, right? Like, do we think we can get away with this? And so bears, if they think they can leave comfortably, they'll leave. But if they think you're going to get them, you're going to corner them, they'll fight. It's a lot like, if you're taking public transportation and some tough-looking person gets on the bus or train or whatever it is, you don't want to stare them down. You don't want to be like, I see you, because they'll be like, what you looking at? And then you have a problem. But you don't want to be like, oh, man, where's my wallet? Put in my underwear. Hope they don't get me, because then you invite an attack, right? So with bears, you do the same thing. If you surprise a bear, you want it to feel comfortable going about its way. So you slump your shoulders, and you just kind of keep your periphery on them, and you talk so they know you're not a prey species, and you hopefully give them their space to move out confidently. If they do feel trapped, they might charge you, but you still don't just drop and play dead. Because if you dropped and played dead and curled up in the fetal position, they might think it's the DoorDash guy. And they might think, even though they weren't going to attack you, now they're like, hey, maybe that's a cheap, easy meal. I'll do it. And apparently, most charges from grizzly bears are what they call bluff charges. So they're going to stop 10 feet away or veer off. So if you are going to play dead, you wait till that last 9 feet before you drop down. And you don't curl in the fetal position. You put your hands behind your head. You keep your pack on. You kind of spread your legs so you're not so easy to tip over. You keep face down. Maybe you have your bear spray to get off a shot if you can. All right. So, Bluff charges. Oh, okay, I'm ready for that. I had a friend actually that year who got bluff charged twice. Twice he had a bear come at him like 35 miles an hour or whatever they do and stop 10 feet away. That guy went through a lot of underwear. So Gretchen came out, and I had my plan to marry her. We're below Heaven's Peak. I'm all nervous and sweaty, not thinking about bears at all, just thinking about, oh, is she going to say yes? And she did. And I was so happy. We went off pinky swinging down the trail, just blissing out. Bam, turned the corner, first time all year, right into a bear. And so the bear, jumps off the trail. And it's like you could see it moving around in the bushes. It's like 20, 30 feet away. And it's huffing, it's woofing. It's like, which means it's nervous. It's trying to figure out what to do. But we knew what to do. We slumped our shoulders, didn't quite look at it, started talking like a human. In fact, I talked to the bear. I said, hey, bear, thanks for having us in your habitat. You are a magnificent creature. Looks like you're a vegetarian bear. A lot of huckleberries up there, so maybe you want to go check them out. And lo and behold, bear went off. And right? So we got to celebrate the night of our engagement by reading chapter 2 of that book. It's a much different deal. So chapter 2 said sometimes these bears know where you are. They smell something in your camp, something you're cooking, something in your tent. Don't bring food in your tent ever. It said, hang your food over there, eat over here, camp here, never bring food in the tent. Stay in a tent because it's an optical illusion for bears. They don't really know what's in there. Okay, so different deal, and scare them away because you don't want them getting more confident with every step. You want to say, hey, I'm not an easy meal. This is not your territory. Get out of here. All right. So we did a couple of hitches, did our hiking all over the place, and then we got sent up to the Two-Chuck campground, which is right by the Canadian border, for a mission the next day. On our way up there, we stopped at Pole Bridge, had a trout dinner, had a couple of beers. We weren't in a government rig, by the way. And went on up. Gretchen passed out. She was tired. She's been hiking her butt off. And I set up the tent by the lights of the car because I don't like to use flashlights and you just see one little spot. You don't have that whole night vision, but you need something to set up a tent. So I had my 4-season tent. I had pillows and everything, love nest, but she was out. So helped Gretchen stagger into there. She passed out immediately. I went back to the car, clicked off the lights on the Isuzu Trooper, and just gave thanks for a minute to be out there and about to start my life with this beautiful woman. And I lay down in my sleeping bag, and I hear right outside the screen, yep, oh, that's a bear. So I sat up, hey, bear, hey, and boom, bear moved off. You could hear it, chomp, 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 chomp. You could hear it kind of circle and then go away. I didn't know what to do. Listened for a while, so decided to go back to sleep. So there we are, falling back asleep, just as you're drifting off. Right at the edge of this. Hey, bear, get out of here, hey. And the bear ran off again. And I didn't know, was it gone? I didn't have a flashlight. I wanted to come out of the tent. I felt like my ear was 4 feet wide, listening. And that scene in the horror movie where the guy and the girl are making out on the couch and they hear something outside and the guy's like, I hear something. Hold on, I'll be back to check that out. Meanwhile, the axe murderer is tiptoeing out there and you're like, he's not coming back. So I was like, okay, I watched that movie. I'm not doing that. So we were like, how do we get to the trooper and not get out of this tent? Because we're supposed to stay in this tent. It's an optical illusion. Well, Gretchen's an environmental engineer, and the two of us got together and figured something out. So we ripped a hole in the bottom of the tent. And we picked it up like Fred Flintstone's car, like a giant turtle shell. And we boogied over to the trooper. We unzipped that door, we reached in, and we jumped into the back seat. And in the fetal position, we spooned all night long. And we have been for the last 25 years. Thank you so much.
All
Thank you, Rad. Next up, we have Bridget Feerick, who traveled the world before making home in Missoula. She has continued to explore this country and the world beyond. Her passion for the outdoors is matched by a deep commitment to community engagement and social justice. Bridget holds people in transitions using her intuitive powers as an organizer, cleaner, birth, postpartum death doula, yoga instructor, herbalist, Reiki and sound healing practitioner, and so on and so forth. You get the picture. She hopes to empower and inspire you tonight to tap into your intuitive powers. Please welcome Bridget Feerick.
I was 27 at a crossroads. I could either keep digging the grave I had been digging for the last 6.5 years as I stayed stuck in a toxic relationship that never felt right from the start. Or I could get on a plane and fly thousands of miles away to another country to explore who I was beyond all the comforts, the conveniences, the pain, the sadness and the tears that had consumed too much of my life at this point. I chose the plane. So now here my feet are exploring the dance floor, my hips moving to the Latin music in the club at the Peruana Hostel in Cusco, Peru. My eyes notice this very attractive man on the other side of the bar. I'm now enraptured in his eyes, trying not to be too creepy, staring occasionally. His eyes are this deep brown eyes, dark black hair, dark beard. He has these glasses that are thick and studious, framing his also luscious eyelashes. It wasn't too long before he also noticed me, and now we are stargazing into one another's souls throughout this evening as I'm moving my body. At one point, I notice he's going for the wheel of deals. He's about to spin it, and now it's starting, the arm is teetering between that buy one, get one, and then the 15% off, and then this little sliver that said, share a shout and have a kiss. So now our eyes are locked in on each other, and the music dims and fades as the lights, and everything just goes to the wayside. He is now walking towards me as a sea of people part. Time slows down. I am freaking out because I'm also like, what's my breath like? Or am I stinky? I don't know. Should I really just run at this point? I am like shaking, as I am actually right now. I am shaking, and I find my feet, I find my gut that's telling me actually just to root down in this moment. Let him come towards me. And so now he's 6 inches away. He asks me, ¿Quieres un beso? I kind of reluctantly say, sí, and before I know it, our lips are now locked. Our bodies are touching. The energy is now circulating between my body into his body and his to mine, and we are one cosmo in this moment still. Nothing else matters. The next morning, I wake up in his bed. And now we are taking our deep, fluent language of body and energy into the breakfast nook, in which we're now entering a whole nother level of language, in which it becomes quite apparent now that we have a language barrier. I, speaking a little bit of Spanish and hoping that at this point that all the Spanish would just flood back, all those hours spent in classes, and it had not, unfortunately. And he, struggling with his English, we quickly grab our phones and are now using Google Translate. He says, me llamo at one point, and so I'm kind of confused because I'm used to saying me llamo, which is my name is. And he explains to me that in Argentina, people say, when they say the double L's and the Y, it makes a sh sound, which would explain why I was hearing a lot of sh happening. He wasn't trying to hush me. We were eager to understand, and I quickly learned that he is also a fellow solo traveler, artist. And I, too, he is making the Che route on motorcycle from Buenos Aires, Argentina to Canada. He asked me if I'd like to join him for a ride in the mountains in Cusco there, and so I quickly say yes. He introduces me to his bike. His bike is a very unique bike. It's a CG Honda 150. It's a small one for those motorheads that might know what I mean. And there was a brown sheepskin on the saddle with these plastic, maybe 5-gallon jugs that he had cut the top off and then drilled on the side as alternative pannier bags. He had a rack in the front and a rack in the back. I jumped on the back, and now the wind is in my hair, feeling the cool air of the Andes. At one point, we stop and take in the Cusco view, the city view. It's serene. We are nestled up next to each other. He looks into my eyes and says, "Would you like to join me on my journey?" He quickly follows that by, "I've never asked anybody this before," and I feel honored and also a little bit taken back. Like, I mean, who does that? Like, what, maybe we've known each other now less than 24 hours, who would actually go now on our second or third date to jump on a motorcycle, be totally codependent, and share a 2-person tent, share a little motorcycle, navigate the language barrier as we navigate cultural differences, and on top of that, we're traveling, cohabitating. Who the fuck does that? I say, here's my number, let's keep in touch. I had to finish 2 months here at this farm that I'm working at as an exchange, and you finish up your time, and let's just keep in touch. So during those 2 months, we're now texting each other, and it just kind of fizzles out. I occasionally get a picture, and that's exciting, but I don't feel that same electric pull. But then there's something that I feel deep in my guts. So now I'm on that airplane. I am now moving from Cusco, Peru, the Andes, to northern Peru, the Talata airport. I am actually not just taking one plane, but I am taking 2 planes. And on this plane, that gives me plenty enough time to go through all the what ifs. So the what if he's actually into black magic, and he has a whole bunch of black magician friends, in which I'm actually part of a setup, in which when I get there, I'm going to be part of a seance, and I'm going to be the sacrifice, and then brutally murdered and cut up to tiny pieces, and then grilled, and then be part of some cannibal ritualistic feast. I am now panicking. My little puddles of sweat accumulating in my hands are now lakes. I am flooding from sweat from my armpits. Breathing is a far distant thought. At this point, I wish I had gotten my pilot license so I could really just hijack this plane and go back to Cusco, Peru, where at least I felt a little bit of comfort and familiarity there. The plane lands. I find my feet. I find my gut. I find my breath. I get off that plane. I go to the baggage claim. I grab my heavy-ass backpack. I put it on. I look at my phone, and it's actually, my phone is now dead. And then I'm just trying to remember, like, where did we even think about a place to meet? I mean, I haven't seen him this far. So now I'm panicking once again, and I am making circles in this small airport, and I'm losing my footing. I'm losing my breath once again. So I'm reaching into my pocket for that plan B. I'm gripping that plan B. I walk out the doors. And lo and behold, who's standing there in that parking lot with his motorcycle and an extra helmet in his hand, waiting there for me. I'm feeling foolish, kind of silly, a little bit awkward, and yet this little bit of intuition in me tells me, keep walking forward. So now we are 6 inches from each other, 4 inches, 2 inches. We are now embracing one another. Our hearts find one another. I'm reminded why I got on that plane in the first place. That energy is now circulating through us, and we are back in the cosmos. I jump on that motorcycle. That motorcycle takes me 3 months in on this incredible journey that I could have never imagined, moving from northern Peru to northern Ecuador. We always were committed to holding one another through the ups and downs. One of our last adventures was the El Vuelo del Condor, the flight of the condor, the tallest swing in Ecuador. I got on that stage for that swing. The floor dropped beneath my feet, down and out 197 feet. I am now over the edge, flying over the edge of the mountains in which I'm 8,500 feet in the Andes in Baños, Ecuador. I'm scared and I shit my pants, and then I am now laughing hysterically like a mad woman. And then after this rush passes, I feel this ease of going back and forth on the swing. My eyes find the horizon. I take in the cool air and the beautiful view, and I remember how I got here. How I followed my gut, how all these people along on my journey held me up. They supported me, they trusted me, they loved me, they accepted me, they shared everything that they had, all these people on this journey. And now here I am, feeling the fullness, the richness of life. In that moment, I take a vow to myself. I will never turn my back on my intuition again. Because it is my intuition that got me here in this moment, feeling the most alive I had felt so much in my life. And I felt my heart. I felt the love in my heart. I felt all the acceptance and beauty for myself and for the world. La vida loca y es hermoso. This life is crazy and beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, Bridget. These bandanas are available for sale at the merch table. Our next storyteller lives on the north side with his perpetual kitten, Ziggy, and his wife, Joyce. He's the founder and executive director of Tell Us Something. Please welcome Marc Moss. How many people here are new to Missoula? Yeah, anybody? Okay. Have you been here in the winter? You hear the laughter. Because what happens in the winter, it doesn't always look as good as it does today. Maybe you were here during the fire season and it was super smoky and it sort of just settled into the valley. You remember that? That happens in the winter too, but it's not smoke, it's clouds. We call it an inversion because that's what it's called in the weather language. And January, February, it's like, when can we get the fuck out of Missoula? It's so dark. And I'm scrolling social media, and a friend of mine had a post that said, hey, I'm looking for a house sitter. And he lives in the lower Rattlesnake. And I don't spend a lot of time there, but I'm thinking Rattlesnake, like the Rattlesnake Valley, that gets me above their inversion, right? And it doesn't, to let you know. But that was the first thing I thought of, and I also, he's going to be gone for a month, and so like that would be nice just to get out of my house for a change of scenery. And Joyce could come with me, and it'd be like a staycation. So I said, I'll house sit for you. He messaged me back, you sure? Have you ever done this before? You've taken care of animals? Like, I'm an animal. I take care of myself. He says, come on up for the disorientation. So I go to his house. His name is Ari. And, yeah, Ari Laveau, he's a food writer for what was the Missoula Independent. And I've seen him in the Pulp recently, I think. Or maybe it was Montana Free Press. Anyway, he's a great food writer. Great article on a recipe on ratatouille recently. Awesome. So I'm like, he's going to have a great kitchen, and we're going to just hang out with the elk up on Mount Jumbo. This is what he's telling me is going to be great. We're going to sit in the hot tub and just watch the elk up on the mountain, drinking wine. We have to take care of the dog and the cat, who go in and out of the house through this open window in the bedroom. And remember, it's February. And he's like, and so it gets a little cold, but there's plenty of blankets. And also, don't use the furnace. That's last resort. Use this converted wood-burning stove. It runs on gas now, and it keeps the house warm. And the house was warm. I was like, oh, great. Like, this will be good. He goes, but if the pilot light goes out, which it should, I can't remember it ever happening, but if it does, here's how you relight it. Okay, write that down. So he says, I won't have cell service where we're going, but I can text, and I can receive texts, but I don't think you're going to have any problems. We do need to learn, I need to show you about the girls. Okay. So outside we walk, and he's like, there's an outbuilding over there. Like, you don't have to, like, go in there very much, but just make sure the pipes don't freeze. So we walk in there, take our shoes off, and we walk. There's, like, a little space heater by the sink. Okay, no problem. And that's my office. There's another little outbuilding. He's like, there's no running water in there, so don't worry about that. You probably won't have to go in there much. But the girls, like, they need your attention, and the girls are chickens. And I can't remember. I think there are 11 of them. And he's like, have you ever taken care of chickens before? I said, no. He said, well, it's pretty straightforward. Just make sure their water doesn't freeze, and there's like this bowl of water. And there's some feed, come out every morning, feed them. And there's a heat lamp in the chicken coop to make sure that they don't freeze. And that, their body heat and plus the heat lamp, they're going to be fine for the time that I'm gone. It'll be great. They generally don't lay a lot of eggs this time of year, but just check. And if there are eggs, harvest the eggs and eat them. Like, of course, that's what I would do. I like eggs. So he's like, you good? I'm like, I'm good. So off he leaves. He goes to Peru. Or Chile. He goes to Chile. Sorry, I was thinking of Bridget's story. And I move in. I got a journal and some books and laptop. I'm gonna sort all those photos that I've been meaning to sort. And 2018, this is when this was. And so I don't know if you people who have been here for a while remember the February of 2018. It was like negative wind chill for 2 weeks and like 10 degrees maybe the high of 25. It was cold, and the Hellgate winds came ripping up the valley, and we're creating snowdrifts like this. And I was having to get a shovel just to get out of the house so I could shovel down the driveway to get the car out to go to work. The pilot light happens to go out. We relight that. It's a whole mess on texting, and we got it figured out. And in the morning, I dig myself out, take the dog for a walk up the road. There's a nice little park, and it's bone-chilling cold, but also invigorating. If I didn't have a dog to walk, I probably wouldn't be outside. So bonus points for dogs. That's a good reason to have one. Gets you outside, gets you moving around. Picked up his poop, take it back home, put it in the garbage. He's safe. He's fed, watered. I got to go to work. The cat's good. So I go to work. And I'm thinking, the hot tub is not happening. It's so windy. It takes so much effort to get in and out of the hot tub. I'm just not going to do it. Dude, Joyce, you want to come over? We're going to have popcorn and watch movies. Let's do that. So I go to work. I'm at work, and the phone rings, my phone rings, and it's Ari. And I'm like, hello? I thought you didn't have cell service. How are you? He's like, good, considering. I was like, considering? Considering the fire department just left the house. Fuck. I'm like, did I leave a burner on? I'm trying to go through all what did I do that morning? He's like, everybody's fine. The girls are fine. The dog, the cat, everybody, the house is fine. But I need you to do something for me. I'm like, what is it? He said, I need you to take the chicken coop burned down. I need you to take the chickens somewhere else, because right now they're in my office shitting over everything. I'm like, okay. I've never transported chickens. He's like, that's okay. Go to the grocery store, Good Food Store. Thanks, Good Food Store, for your sponsorship tonight, by the way. Go to the Good Food Store, get some produce boxes, and each lady gets her own box. And so, it's dark now, but go get the boxes, and in the morning, each lady gets her own box, and you're going to take them out to Josh Schlotnick's farm. Awesome. Thanks, Josh. What am I going to do there? Well, he's got a greenhouse that it's obviously not being used right now, so he said that we can put the chickens in the greenhouse. Awesome. Great. So I'm really sorry about the chicken coop. He's like, Marc, it wasn't your fault. I'm sure the heat lamp, the fire department said that the heat lamp must have fallen onto the straw and set it on fire. And I was like, I didn't knock it over. And he's like, no, I'm sure you didn't. One of the chickens, I'm sure, knocked it over. I'm not mad at you. It's fine. I'm not coming home. You're going to continue to house sit. Josh is going to take care of the chickens. Thanks, Josh. Thank you, Josh. Because Josh's farm is way on the edge of town. I don't have to drive out there every morning and go take care of the chickens. So Joyce and I go to the Good Food Store, get some produce boxes, load them into the back of her truck. In the morning, we go back, take the boxes out, and stage them outside of Ari's office. And I'm like, are you ready for this? And she's like, yeah, I guess so. I don't know. I put gloves on. We've got jackets, of course, long sleeves. I'm concerned about being pecked or scratched by these traumatized girls who, they're in a space that they're not used to being in. Their home just burnt down. I feel so bad for them, and I really want to take care of them. So we open the door. They don't run out. I'm like, that's good. So I grab one, and I'm sort of behind her, grabbing her from the side so their wings aren't flat, but are keeping her away from me so their talons aren't scraping me, and she's trying to peck me. And Joyce has the box open, sort of like a mouse trap. She's ready. And so I place her in the box, and Joyce puts the lid on. Success. Okay, we can do that again. We have to do it 10 more times. Okay, we can do that. So we load them all into boxes and load them into the back of Joyce's truck and go out to Josh Schlotnick's place. And Josh told me, he's like, I'm not going to be home, and my wife is leaving for work, so you might not see either one of us. Here's the greenhouse that you're going to use, and, like, knock yourself out. So we get there and sort of get the lay of the land and figure out this is the greenhouse that we're going to use because there's two of them. And so we just bring all the boxes into the greenhouse one at a time to stage them, and then get their food and get their water, and then open the boxes, and they're like, oh, this is our new home. This is our new home. And it was. Thanks, Marc, and thanks, Ari, for the opportunity. Bryan Christianson's guiding principle is the question, what makes life different today from any other day? Wait, let's start again. I was so nervous after having just done that. Thanks, Marc. Yeah, you're welcome. Bryan Christianson's guiding principle is the question, what makes today different from any other day? This question informs how he approaches his profession, landscape photography. In 2024, Bryan was awarded the Wild Montana Keep It Wild Award for his work capturing wild places in Montana and beyond. He is also an accomplished musician and teaches photography in the Missoula County Public Schools through Spark Arts. Please welcome Bryan Christianson.
A little over a month ago, I found myself hurrying along an airy ridge, en route to a moment on that ridge where a cliff bifurcated it, cutting it in half, eliminating easy further passage. I had been to this spot before, and I knew that there was a route through this 100-foot tall cliff band, and I wanted to sort it out before, I wanted to preview it again and figure it out before we crossed the cliff band early in the morning in the dark to gain the other side, to gain a saddle on the other side. Upon figuring out the route, I was happy to do that, and I started to relax a little bit. And on my quarter-mile walk back towards our camp, I began to appreciate the lofty perch we had found for ourselves. There was our tent on a little knoll 4,000 feet above the valley floor in the middle of the Bob Marshall Wilderness. We were several miles off trails without a soul in sight. I get back to the tent, and I look for Linz, my partner, my wife. And I see her just on the other side of the hill, and I see her sitting there staring off over 7 or 8 layers of mountain, doing what Linz does best. She's a master of finding the moment, whatever it is. So often I move around the world with this veneer of worry and anxiety that clouds things being what they really are and makes them instead go through this filter that makes them some version of what they are, but not quite clearly. Linz, on the other hand, can sit in one place and stare, literally, I've seen her do this, for hours and hours and hours, analyzing a space, whether it's in a thrift store or in the Bob Marshall Wilderness where we found ourselves. This is a gift that she has. And so I find myself calming into this space after an expunging of frenetic energy going to try to figure out our route and think ahead, always thinking ahead. And I go and I grab my camp chair and I go and sit next to her. And we sit and we look out over the landscape together. We enter into conversation, but then wander out as we pick out different features in the landscape and talk about it, and then just long periods of silence. After about a half hour, she announces, "Switch." I was like, "What? Switch what?" She's like, "Oh, we're going to go and now absorb this other view of the landscape." I was like, "Okay." So we move our chairs, and now we move to the point where we have an unobstructed view of the reason why we why our tent was here. And that was to view the magnificent masterpiece that is the Chinese wall. We had perched our tent just within eyesight of it. And what the wall is a space where 60 plus million years ago, when our mountains, the Rocky Mountains, were formed, some of the oldest rock on Earth, by a fluke of geology, got pushed up over younger rocks, creating a continuous, unbroken 13-mile cliff that ranges from 600 to 1,000 feet tall. And our tent was within half a mile of the start of the wall, and we could see a 4-mile section of it swoop out in front of us before it did a dogleg left around the corner. And so we sat there conversing, looking, and I occasionally picked up my camera to just take a capture, just a quick capture to get a little rock detail, just to document the place. And I remember how grateful I am to have this camera in my hands, because it is because of Lynn's, who I'm sitting next to, that I have it, because she loaned a camera to me years ago when I was going to climb Mount Rainier, and she gave me this camera, and she's like, you got to take pictures. I'd gone to photography school, and I'd sold all my equipment, so I didn't even have any equipment. And she gave me her camera, and I took these photos, and that has led now, 10, 12, 15 years later, into a full-blown career in landscape photography. And I'm sitting there with her with this camera, knowing that she's the reason why I have this and why I have this career, which has helped slow me down, because I am the opposite of Lynn's. I have frenetic energy that needs to be channeled and specifically into creative acts, and that has led me to photography. And so we sit there, we take in the view, we converse, we look. And then she announces switch, and so we switch. And we go to the next view. And this time, this view now completes the 360-degree panorama from our lofty knoll that gives us this uninterrupted view of almost the entirety of the Bob Marshall Wilderness. At this point, the sky is getting inky dark blue, just past blue hour. The first stars are starting to show. And Lynn's announces, switch. And I'm like, wait, there's nothing else to look at. And she unclips her camp chair, and she lays on her back and takes in the Milky Way, the late summer Milky Way, which stretched directly overhead. And I do the same, and we lay there entertained by shooting stars and satellites for another hour until finally our eyes grow heavy and we turn in for the night. I'm startled awake at 6 a.m. where I had set my alarm for, hoping to capture the sunrise, and I'm even more startled to see that there's already a blush of red in the sky, which for photography, that means it's already too late. I would love to be at a location well before there's any color or interest in the sky, calming myself, getting ready to figure out compositions to make images. And so I wake up harried. I need to go, and I grab my photography equipment. I rush the 1/4 mile to that cleft in the ridge where we have to climb the 1,000-foot band of the 100-foot cliff band. It was not 1,000 feet. And I do a perfunctory scan of the basin below just to see if there's any early morning wildlife moving around, and there's not. And so I take a few pictures until Lynn's catches up to me. We navigate the cliff band together, and then we move on to the saddle where I want to photograph the Chinese wall. Now, at the saddle, we are there, and we see the rise of the wall go 300-400 feet up to our left and then unfold like a ribbon for 4 miles. It is spectacular. And I set about as the color starts to change in the sky, frantically going about at this point because I woke up frantic. It continued. And the color came through the sky, red, oranges into the middle clouds, and that orange started moving down until it started to give the first kiss of light up at the top of the wall. And that kiss of light started coming down, and I'm running around like a headless chicken. Sorry, Marc's chickens. Trying to figure out what the compositions are, and the light's constantly changing. I have no compositions in mind. I am frantic trying to figure this out. And I move around, the light shifting and changing, and I'm shooting for about 45 minutes until the light finally turns into a nice clear white, and the shadows shorten, and the landscape loses its shape, and I lose my photographic interest. Certainly not my interest as a human and visual one to look at this spectacular piece. And I'm frantic, breathing heavy, and I look over at Lynn's, who's sitting there with her eyes closed and the morning sun on her face, just breathing. And I breathe. I go join her, and we eat breakfast, and I drink some coffee, and we're sitting there just enjoying this amazing summer morning at this masterpiece of geology. And all of a sudden, Linz announces, switch. I'm like, why would we switch? We are here. This is why we came, for the Chinese wall. It is in front of us, and we're as close as you can get to it. It would be, I guess, like going to the Eiffel Tower and turning your back and saying, let's look the other way and see what that looks like. And so I indulged her, and I was like, okay, we'll look the other way. Of course, there were mountains behind us. There was plenty to look at. And so we moved 20 feet away from our packs and my camera. I leave it there. We moved 20 feet to the other side of the ridge. And we have our conversation. We're talking like we have done. This cycle has repeated itself now many times until all of a sudden Linz gets really quiet. And I see that she's looking past me up the hill, up the ridge. And I follow her gaze, and I see something about 300 feet away, the size of a small to medium-sized dog, an animal moving in our direction. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what is that? And I kind of know, I have a sense of what it is, but I don't want to say. I'm not sure. I'm not positive. And Linz asks, with somewhat trepidation in her voice, she says, what do we do? And I, projecting onto her what she's asking, is like, well, my camera's behind me, so I can't, and I know if I get up, I'm going to spook the animal. So what I say to her, which sounds a lot more courageous than it is, I say, just watch. And so now the animal's 150 feet away from us, closing in on us, and now I know, I see the unmistakable lope of a weasel. We had owned ferrets at one point in the past, and they have this bounce that they bounce along, and I'm like, oh, that's a weasel. I knew for certain. And so the weasel's moving closer to us, and I'm still not quite sure exactly what it is, but now I'm starting to realize what it could be. And I ask Lynn still, but I don't think it's this. I say, a pine marten? And she emphatically says no. And now it's 75 feet away from us, closing in on us, seemingly unaware of our presence on this ridge. We're quiet, and the wind is in our favor. It can't smell us. And so it's moving closer to us, and I now notice a bushy tail, a white V on its chest, big hanging canines, ferocious mouth just open, and it's moving in our direction. I had been on studies in which we had game cameras and tried to document these critters. I'd put some of my own up in a basin in remote northern Bitterroot this summer in hopes of maybe one day catching sight of this animal. And so I turned to Linz and I asked, Wolverine? And she says, yes. And the Wolverine comes within 40 feet, 30 feet, 20 feet, 15 feet, and whoosh, it's past us. And it scurries along the ridge, well past, right over the next ridge in about 30 seconds. It was moving so quickly. And Linz and I, so giddy with excitement that this, one of the rarest mammals in North America, for which there's only thought to be 100 in Montana, and we got to see one run right past us. We stand up and we start like hugging each other and like kind of jumping and shaking hands, maybe like stranger contestants on a game show might when somebody wins. We didn't know what to do. This was an experience for which we had no basis in experience to know how to react except for jubilation. And I am so grateful to Linz for providing the space and presence of moment to sink into a space to have experiences like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Bryan. And thank you to all of our storytellers this evening. Thank you to our storyteller sponsors, the Good Food Store and Exit Realty, helping us to pay our storytellers. Thanks to our accessibility sponsor, Parkside Credit Union, allowing us to provide American Sign Language interpreters for the event. And thanks to our stewardship sponsor, Marsh McLennan Insurance, allowing us to provide free tickets to over 60 deserving individuals who otherwise might not be able to attend a cultural event like Tell Us Something. Thanks to our media sponsors, MissoulaEvents.net, Mike's Print and Copy, the Roxy Theater, Missoula Broadcasting Company, including the family of ESPN Radio, The Trail 103.3, Jack FM, and Missoula's source for modern hits, U104.5. And thanks to our in-kind sponsors, Float Missoula and Joyce of Tile. Learn more about Joyce of Tile at joyceoftile.com. When you patronize these businesses, thank them for their support of storytelling in Missoula. Our sponsors are one piece in helping us produce our live events, which are our main source of income to operate all year long. Ticket revenue and sponsorship dollars are insufficient to cover our costs, and our board chair, Spencer Bradford, is on his way to talk a little bit more about that. Spencer.
If everybody could just give it up for Marc Moss just one more time. He doesn't. So I want to tell you a 60 to 90 second story. And guess what? The best part about it is that you are all in it. So in 2011, Tell Us Something had its first storytelling. The theme was Dear Diary. And over the next 10 years, Marc bootstrapped the hell out of this organization, doing a lot of shows at the Top Hat and all sorts of venues. There were some Wilma shows. And over those 14 years, there have been dozens of shows, hundreds of storytellers, and thousands of Missoulians have been able to experience live storytelling. And this is where you are at. You are now part of Tell Us Something's story. And we appreciate that because this doesn't happen without you coming to these events. So I just want to say, give yourself a round of applause, please. So the three things you can do to help us out, guess what? You've already done the first one. Come to our events. There's going to be one in January. The theme will be self-evident. The second is real similar to the first. It's bring a friend to that January event. If you have a great time, tell somebody about Tell Us Something. The third is that if we can raise $2,000 tonight, there are cards with QR codes and people with buckets in the wings of the theater and around. There's going to be a brief 10-minute intermission. One of our board members will match up to $2,000, and essentially that $4,000 will help us cover the costs to put on an event like this, just the theater rental. So I want to say thank you. You are Tell Us Something, and enjoy your 10-minute intermission. Thank you very much.
Welcome back. Thank you to everyone who donated during intermission. Thank you so much for that. And if you had a chance to get yourself a bandana, thanks for that. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for your love and your open hearts, your respect and your very presence. Without you, Tell Us Something can't happen. We are now at the audience participation part of the show. And I don't know if I said this at the beginning for those of you who've never been here. When you walked in, you were offered the opportunity to share your own Walk on the Wild Side story anonymously. And this is the part of the night where you get to hear some of those. So I've got a couple of volunteers who are going to come up and read those stories. Kathy Schultens, former Tell Us Something storyteller, and Lynn Sanders, who is Bryan's. Bryan, this is the lens from Bryan's story.
We just want to say thank you to everybody. We got over 35 submissions, and we wish we could read them all, but we can't. So some of you guys need to go to penmanship class. So walk on the wild side. 1, I defied my parents and moved by myself to Florida at 17. I had $200 and no job. I had never even been on an airplane before. 2, I teach high school students.
Switch. There was a moose up near Mansion Heights. I was assigned to get video of it for the local news. Like an idiot, I walked right up to the thing with my camera, and it put its head down and charged me. Luckily, a family with a minivan flung open their door and told me to dive in. I did, and the moose missed me by inches. I know better now.
I had 2 children with my ex-husband. We were kind of poor at the time of my second pregnancy, and I didn't get to go to a doctor the whole time I was pregnant. When it was time for the birth, my husband and I were separated. I lived in a camper and had nowhere to have my baby. I ended up giving birth on the floor of my husband's girlfriend's house.
In 2010, I went to Germany to visit my dad, who was living there at the time. I was 20 years old and had 2 college buddies in tow. We decided one night to take the train to Amsterdam and check it out. Being young and overly confident, we decided to first buy some weed, specifically the 2009 Cannabis Cup winner, Super Lemon Haze. If you are a casual pot smoker, I would not recommend this. We were absolutely wrecked, and I remember being terrified of all the women behind the glass doors lining the red light district. At one point, a bouncer said to us, "Come see the show. I guarantee it will be disgusting." Never again.
This is written staccato. Girls' night out. Older boys say, "Can't you stay out later?" "All staying at my house." We walk in the front door, stuff the beds with stuffed animals, walk out the back door. Coming home to the doors locked. Calling Dad, and he said, "The gig's up." We made everyone call their parents. No more sleepovers for at least a month. Great parents, though.
It was a warm day, at least by Antarctic standards. It must have been at least 30 degrees. I took a walk overlooking the ice, the sea ice, at the base of the 06 hill. After sitting for a while in the sun, looking down on the big hole in the ice, I dozed off. About 20 minutes later, I was awakened by a loud pew. What the hell was that? Then I heard it again, pew, and saw 2 minke whales swimming about in the hole in the ice. The sound was them breathing through their blowholes.
She's a great minke whale, isn't she? When my husband and I were wildly kissing in his car as teens in the Midwest, flashing lights pulled up from behind us. It was the tree spraying trucks for cicadas in Illinois.
Backpacking through grizzly bear country while on my period.
I once accidentally locked my friend's toddler in the car. Someone had asked to borrow jumper cables, and I'd hopped out of the car to check the trunk and shut the door thinking it was unlocked. The little boy wasn't quite old enough to get out of his car seat by himself, and I also didn't want to alarm him as he was happy eating snacks. The guy who had asked for the jumper cables felt totally responsible and offered the help. The window was a little bit open, not enough to reach in, but enough. It wasn't a hot day, so I figured we had the time to wait for AAA, as long as the baby stayed calm. I asked the jumper cable guy if he knew the Lou Reed song, Take a Walk on the Wild Side. It's his favorite song, I said. Only at the chorus, I substitute his name. So instead of, hey, baby, it's, hey, Bobby, take a walk on the wild side. So we sang him the song through the window until the tow truck showed up. Turns out they're pretty quick if you mention there's a kid locked in the car. I'm forever grateful for that stranger who wanted to walk on the wild side with me.
My wildest story, or at least the first one that comes to mind, is the time I got lost in a rainforest in Costa Rica. I was doing research during my undergrad years, studying a specific relationship between insects and trees. I was looking down too much while examining seedlings when I heard a sound behind me. I jumped and screamed, assuming it was about to be eaten by a leopard. It turned out to be a Mexican dwarf porcupine, who also jumped and screamed, probably assuming the same thing. I survived the encounter and found the trail a few minutes later.
Thank you, Linz, and thank you, Kathy. And thank you to everyone who submitted a story. And thanks again to everyone who donated. Opening up the second half of our evening is Land Tawney. Land Tawney is a fifth-generation Montanan prone to wandering and good times. Land earned his Bachelor of Science focused in wildlife biology from the University of Montana and has been working his entire adult life to conserve public lands and water and access to them at the local, state, and federal levels. From testifying in front of Congress in Washington, D.C., to organizing grassroots volunteers all across North America, Land walks the walk. Now he co-chairs a new nonprofit, American Hunters and Anglers Action Network, and works tirelessly to protect our public lands for present and future generations. Please welcome Land Tawney.
All right, so I get this call from my friend Ryan. It's the most amazing call ever, and he says, hey, do you want to go down to the Frank Church Wilderness No Return on a backpack trip? And I was like, heck yeah. And then he says something even better. He says, it's going to be supported by llamas, and so we don't have to carry anything on our backs. And I was like, hell yeah. So then I ask him, like, well, what are the dates? So he tells me the dates. I start running through my head, okay, it's not my anniversary, but it's in the July. Oh, man, I'm sorry, I can't go. He's like, why can't you go? I'm like, it's my daughter Sydney's 10th birthday. So I'd gone from just so excited, I can't go. And without skipping a beat, he says, well, why don't you bring her? And I was like, yeah, I mean, she's 9, almost 10. Yeah, I think she could probably do it. So I get off the phone, I wait for my wife to come home, and I talk to her about this trip that's been offered, and she's like, yeah, I think she can do it. Since Sydney gets home, I think she was hanging at a friend's house, and she gets home, and before it's even all the way out of my mouth, she's like, Dad, I want to do it. And so now we have this opportunity, dad and daughter, to go into the Frank Church Wilderness of No Return. And so we start training up on Mount Sentinel. And I buy her a backpack. Even though we're going to have these llamas, I want to make sure that she's got water. I want to make sure she has snacks. Plus, I want her to carry something as she goes into the first time into the wilderness. So we're up on Mount Sentinel. We're hiking. She's getting strong. Feels good. And And so the day comes, and we drive. If you know, it's a long drive. So we get up early in the morning, and we drive down to Stanley. It's about another hour outside of Stanley. And we get to the trailhead, and it's this just craziness of llamas and gear everywhere. And so we get there, and we give them our stuff, and they pack it into a llama. And we all get assigned a llama. And so what we're going to do is we're going to hike up this trail, and we're going to all have our own llama, and we're going to take them up to the top of this high mountain lake. It's about a 3-mile hike. First mile is going to be flat. Next 2 are kind of steep to get over the top of that ridge. If you've been in the woods, you know you got to get over that ridge usually to get to that lake. So it's this chaos, but then Sydney gets assigned her llama. His name is Marshall. And Marshall is this old, seasoned llama. He's been around the block. I think he gets assigned to Sydney because she's the youngest one in the group by far. And so we get all packed up, and now it's time to go. And so we're going down the trail. And what I haven't told you yet is this is the middle of July, and it is hot as Hades. Like, I'm talking hot. It's about noon. The sun is beating down on us. We're in a place that is recently burned, so it's absolutely gorgeous. You got these black burned trees. You got the fireweed that's about yay high, that pink, bright fireweed, and the just juxtaposition with that and the trees. It's just gorgeous. So we're walking along this trail, and, it's been hot for a while, and so there's this dust on the trail. So as you're walking, it's like, this dust just comes up in the air. Think about like Pigpen and Peanuts. We're like this mass of llamas and people and dust. Sid's not bothered by it. She's having the time of her life. She's smiling. She's singing. I'm like, this is amazing. So that's that flat part. Yeah. So then we take this hard left, and that's when we start to get a little bit steeper. Now, at the same time, Marshall decides to eat some of that fireweed. Fireweed makes him slobber, like uncontrollably slobber. And so he's slobbering down the back of her leg. This is the first sign that things are changing a little bit. Sidney's like, that's gross. And I'm like, it's okay, it's just llama juice. And so we keep going, and then, since there's a recent burn, there's a ton of downfall. And over one of these logs, she's got Marshall behind her, and she goes over this log while this llama steps on the back of her calf. And I hear it kind of scream. Now, my first thought is if this is a horse, like, it's trip over. Horses with their hooves, they can't really feel what they're touching, and that would have crushed her calf. Been a serious, serious injury. But llamas, they have these 2 toes, and they can feel with those toes. It's like our fingers. So when it touches that calf, it just bounces off. So all it did was scare. So we avoided that mess. But as I said, it's starting to get steep. And, Sydney, she stops talking. And we're both big-time motor mouse, talking all the time. And when she stops talking, something's wrong. So I look at Sid, and I'm like, hey, you okay? She's like, I'm kind of getting tired. And so we give her some water, a little bit of a snack. And I ask our leader, there's about 13 other people with us, and I asked the leader of this trip, I said, how much longer till lunch? Because I know we're stopping for lunch. And he's like, just 20 more minutes. So I looked at Sid, and I said, can you make it 20 more minutes? She's like, yes. So we continue up the trail. Well, if you've ever been in the woods with people, that 20 minutes turns into 30 minutes, turns into 45 minutes before we stop. So we stop, and she's absolutely had it. Her face is bright red. She's on the verge of tears. As a father, I'm looking at that, man, I have ruined her. This is her experience in the woods, and what an idiot. But there's this creek that's running along right there. Comes out of that high mountain lake. It's nice and cold. I'm like, she needs to cool down. So I pick her up, and I dunk her in that water, and I start shaking her. You can't shake a baby. You can shake a 9-year-old. I can tell you that. So she cools down a little bit. We get some food in her, but she's still, you can just see in her eyes, she's still not quite there. So I decided to tell her this story about Theodore Roosevelt. And Theodore Roosevelt in our family is revered. He's why we have these public lands that we have today. And so she's heard so many stories and probably is sick of hearing these stories, but I'm like, I'm going to tell you another one. So when Roosevelt was young, he had asthma, like debilitating asthma. And back in that time, they didn't have inhalers. That ability to, to get rid of kind of that episode that you're having. So what he decided to do is to make himself strong in limb and strong in lung. So he spent a ton of time out in the woods doing just that, just tramping around the woods. And so he got over that affliction by facing it head on. So I tell her this story, and I said, you got two options right now. We can turn around, we can go home, which is okay, or you can face that adversity and we can move on. I did the hardest thing I've probably ever done as a father. I walked away and let her think about that by herself. 9 years old. So I come back a couple minutes later, knowing full well if she wants to go home, we are going home. So I go, Sid, it's up to you. What do you want to do? She's like, I want to do it. I'm like, all right, we're going to do this. So we get up from lunch, and again, she's the youngest by far, and she gets Marshall, and Marshall's old, right? Like he's this old seasoned llama. We got to get up to this high mountain lake, and we take off. And I will tell you what, we crush everybody else to the top. We're the first to the top. And she gets up to the top, and she raises her hand like this, and she's just in triumph. I will never forget that image. So excited. And she strips down. She has her swimming suit on, which is probably one of the reasons why she was hot. But she jumps into this high mountain lake, and the ice off, even though it's July, ice off had not happened not too long ago, and so it was freezing ass cold. She jumps in there, it takes her breath away. Then she gets out, and she kind of stumbles because it's so cold, but she's got this huge smile on her face. Then she's getting out, she sees this little bug. We eat bugs at our house. It's kind of this weird thing that my dad started. He'd say, if fish eat them, I eat them, and so we've carried that tradition on. So she picks up this bug, and it's a stonefly nymph. If you've ever seen these, they're gigantic, and they look like aliens. She picks it up, she puts it in her mouth, and starts chewing on it, and these people are like, what is going on? And it falls out of her mouth, and everybody laughs like you all just did. And she's like, oh yeah, and she goes and grabs it, and she picks it up, and she eats it. So this trip is like, there's so many memories. We go out, there's somebody brought a blow-up kayak. We go out on this lake. The cutthroats, so we're just catching them hand over fist. She's in the front of this kayak. I'm watching this 9-year-old catch these fish. It's absolutely amazing. I've got a rod hanging out the back. These fish are trying to grab my fly, but I never get a chance to fish because she's catching them all. Next night is her birthday. We have her birthday cake in a Dutch oven. People sing her happy birthday. She's now 10 years old, and she did that in the wilderness. Look up at the stars that night, talking about all sorts of things, just contemplating the universe by looking at all these stars. There's so many memories from that trip, but what I remember most is that grit that she showed in that moment of adversity. And sometimes, you got to face that adversity and maybe take a step back and go home. But she instead, she found her inner self, her inner grit. Now she's here tonight, and she's a senior in high school. She had her senior night tonight at soccer. I tell you, I didn't cry at that. I came close. But she's going to be going away to college next year. And undoubtedly, she's going to be facing adversity. And Cindy Claire, what I know is what you face on that mountain, we've already faced in your life. You're always, always going to be able to face that adversity. I love you. Thank you.
Thank you, Land. Our next storyteller is Hayley Glassic. Hayley migrated from her birthplace in Pennsylvania to Georgia, the state, not the country, and eventually to Montana, where she has lived for 8 years. Landing in Missoula has been a blessing for friendship, love, heartbreak, growth, and community. After seeing Tell Us Something in 2022, she has been waiting for a prompt that would fit for her to share a story. Hayley was given lots of cheeky feedback from high school friends of how poor a storyteller she is. By sharing this story, she hopes to break that streak. Please welcome Hayley Glassic.
Hours would melt away as I spent time sketching clothes with colored pencil. I slowly built up a pretty large portfolio that included everything from wedding dresses to couture out there styles. I watched Devil Wears Prada more times than I can count and can recite the cerulean sweater monologue with a performance that rivals Meryl Streep. My senior year of high school, I designed and sewed my prom dress. It was a deep purple, one-shouldered taffeta gown with a pleated bodice and a crystal accent belt. The goal was, of course, to become a clothes designer, walking the streets of New York and showing in the most famous of fashion weeks. I applied to many universities, but only one design school. And all the universities provided some form of financial aid or scholarship, but the design school did not. I didn't want to go into massive amounts of debt in a field that was really cutthroat and had a low rate of success. So I decided to go to the University of Georgia, go Dogs, and shifted my focus to a career path that would arguably be just as glamorous but much more stable. You know, the universal second career choice for all girls who don't go to design school. I would, of course, become a high school biology teacher. My freshman year, I wandered around the Majors Fair and ran into a table for the forestry school. I picked up a pamphlet that said Fisheries and Aquatic Sciences in big, bold word art letters of a photo with a bunch of smiling students holding up fish in a pristine-looking stream. The table was manned by a few upperclassmen wearing camo with deep Southern accents, and one professional advisor toting a mom haircut and wearing a red UGA logo polo that made 19-year-old me cringe. I asked the advisor if I could still be a biology teacher if I majored in fisheries. She said yes, and I declared my major. I quickly went to the bookstore and found a sale rack UGA logo camo hoodie. I decided at that moment that camo could be fashionable if it was intentional. That first summer, I wanted to apply to jobs in my new field. I had one fish class under my belt. I was ready to be a professional. I applied to over 100 jobs, and to my surprise, one of them emailed me back. They wanted to schedule an interview for a salmon hatchery bioaid position, and the address listed Cordova, AK. I thought, all right, some salmon in a tank in the middle of Arkansas. I mean, I've never been to Arkansas. It doesn't seem that cool. But I'll suck it up for this summer and get the experience under my belt. Now, at this time, I didn't know the difference between a trout and a bass. Sharks were still a mystery creature. Definitely not a mammal, but unclear if they were a fish. And so when interviewing as a 19-year-old for a hatchery job in so-called Arkansas, I didn't know that salmon had an intricate life history that included maturing in the ocean and migrating hundreds of miles back to their natal streams to spawn, die, and provide nutrients to the next generation of fish to perpetuate that miracle indefinitely. The first question they asked me during the interview was, are you comfortable and prepared with living in remote locations on islands in the Prince William Sound of Alaska? Now, when you're 19, your reflexes are pretty quick. So I don't think they noticed my hesitation as I realized the job was not in Cordova, Arkansas, but Cordova, Alaska. And I replied quickly, oh yeah, that's not gonna be an issue. They didn't need to know that my high school education clearly lacked geography and state abbreviations. And they also didn't need to know that just a few months earlier, I had been hospitalized and diagnosed with a chronic illness and was taking 10 pills a day to manage the symptoms. You know, when you're 19, details like where the job is and the fact that you should be within an hour of a hospital a lot of times really don't matter. I loaded onto a plane outside of Cordova with a suitcase full of thrifted flannel shirts, because that's what you wear in Alaska, 1,000 pills, and a DVD copy of The Devil Wears Prada. We took off, and I could see the shadow of the plane on the water and the hill slopes of the islands. And before I knew it, we were landing at the hatchery and hooked up to the dock, and the manager came out and shook my hand and said, I'll show you to the dorms. We start at 6 a.m. And that night, I'd like to tell you that I couldn't sleep because of the midnight sun coming through the window in my room. But I know it was because my stomach was in my throat, wondering what the fuck I was getting myself into. The next day, I found myself in the pitch black, wearing a headlamp, a device I didn't know existed, and elbow deep mixing salmon sperm into buckets of salmon eggs. They would hand me a 3-gallon bucket, and I would insert my arm and slowly mix. Counterclockwise, no more than 5 times. A very precise and important step I had to do just so, obviously mimicking exactly what the salmon would be doing in nature. I would let the bucket sit until the eggs went from being squishy to a firm, plump ball, the perfect gummy bear consistency, to then be poured into the incubation tanks and mature. Now, I had a few country boyfriends when I was in Georgia, so I did handle a few fish. But that summer, I personally fertilized 53 million chum salmon eggs while singing and laughing next to a friend that I made at the hatchery, James. James was about 9 years older than me, and despite his singular nipple piercing, he seemed to have his head on pretty straight. And we talked over the weeks, and I shared with him how I wanted to stay in Alaska, quit school, and work my way up the ranks to become a hatchery manager. I couldn't imagine going back to boring old Georgia and leaving the wilds of Alaska. James always seemed to really care about my thoughts and what I had to say. And so at one point, he looked at me earnestly and said, Hayley, this will all be here next summer, waiting for you. I went back to UGA, and a professor got me involved in research, and I did a study on bass genetics. And then next summer, because of all that experience, I was able to intern in Yellowstone National Park, a place I didn't know existed, and camped for the very first time in my life 6 miles back in the Lamar Valley, where we collected fish for a graduate student doing their research. I froze my ass off every single night in a 40-degree Cabela sleeping bag that I bought in Georgia. But my headlamp worked perfectly. And at that point, I realized I didn't want to just be involved in research. I wanted to lead research projects. I would have to go to grad school. I applied to multiple master's projects and got into one. But during my master's, I was hospitalized again. And this time, my disease was much worse. I had to relearn how to walk, and I couldn't complete my fieldwork. I really had to grapple with whether I'd made the right decision. Maybe I should have gone into fashion and massive amounts of debt. But now I kind of knew that this was my path. So I had to balance my disease with this new dream of becoming a fisheries researcher. And luckily, my doctor found a miracle drug, and my disease went into remission. And I stand before you as a doctor and a biologist, a fish biologist with the U.S. Geological Survey. A job 4 years in that still feels like an absolute dream. I get to do research, fieldwork, and advise students. My very first master's student will be graduating in December. I spent this past summer backpacking in the Sierra Nevada and driving across Nevada and Oregon to remote locations to collect stream habitat data, off not seeing anyone but the crew that I was with. I always thought the most wild part of my life would be spent on the streets of New York, dodging people on the sidewalk and elbows on the subway and sucking in tailpipe smoke. And I no longer design clothes, but I still design. I design research projects, and I get to sew together stories about how humans affect our ecosystems and what we can do to keep those ecosystems intact for future generations. I spend my time dodging spider webs and tree branches while breathing in crisp, clean air in the wilds of deserts and forests. But every time I'm in the field, I always think about how I would design my waders differently.
Thank you, Hayley. Up next, Bryan Dalpes, a life, personal development, mental fitness coach who is a passionate advocate for living from the heart. Bryan believes that pursuing personal passions like climbing is essential for bringing joy into the world. From guiding trips in the wilds of Alaska to working ski patrol at Snowbowl here in Missoula, Bryan's time in nature helps define who he is. Please welcome Bryan Dalpes.
It's late August 2012. I'm working as a mountain guide in the quirky little town of McCarthy, Alaska. And I'm living in the dry A-frame of my summer fling, Rachel. Now, Rachel's got this long, perpetually tangled brown hair, these bright brown eyes that when she smiles, she gets this really cute squint. And that smile, it's got its own gravity. It pulls me closer every time she flashes it. And even though Rachel is physically a lot smaller than me, she can carry the same size pack on the most rugged Alaska terrain. She's smart, she's funny, she's beautiful, but what really hooks me is she's so kind. Whether you're a close friend, a total stranger, or one of the random dogs that wanders around McCarthy, Rachel will meet you with kindness and a genuine curiosity about your life. And so, in those days, we didn't have running water or electricity where we were in McCarthy, and the biggest challenge we ran into with that was we couldn't refrigerate our food. Eating canned and dried goods every day gets old really fast. And we had a friend visit who, on their way out, they offered all the food left in their cooler. And there were some veggies and some fruit, but what I saw was this massive sirloin steak. And she warned me. She said, our ice melted probably 2 days ago, so be careful with that. I didn't care. It was too tempting. I fired up the grill, got it nice and hot, threw some extra salt on the steak because that should kill some bugs, right? And I slapped that thing on the grate. The aroma was incredible. My mouth was immediately watering. And I will say, I noticed a little green sheen on the surface of that meat. But I just flipped it over and thought, oh, I'll cook it real well. So I munched that thing down. Every bite was a dream. I went to bed that night feeling fat and happy, only to wake up early the next morning with a GI emergency. And so I scrambled out of the loft, down the ladder in the A-frame, burst out the front door, and started the sprint to the nearest outhouse, which was about 100 feet away. I made it 75 of those 100 feet before catastrophically shitting my pants mid-stride. Now, with no electricity or running water, we didn't have, clothes washer or a shower, so we'll just say McCarthy Creek and I were well acquainted that day. And I spent the rest of the day very close to the outhouse, needing to use it quite often. And I went to bed that night totally exhausted. The next morning I woke up, and my first thought was, man, I feel pretty good. I think I turned the corner on this. Started down the ladder. All it took was being vertical, and I realized, nope, I'm not through this. Now, from the day before, I knew it wasn't worth trying to outrun, so I just stepped outside the front door, down the couple steps, dropped trowel, and left a massive pile right next to the steps. Rachel had left early that morning to fly out to guide a 5-day backcountry trip. So she wasn't around. I had the day off. And I thought, well, no rush to clean this up. I'll go have a cup of coffee. So I'm having my cup of coffee. I'm looking out the guide's window at the beautiful Alaska vista. And lo and behold, here comes Rachel, trotting past the window towards the A-frame. Uh-oh. So I start chasing after, figuring I have to explain myself. And by the time I catch up, she's already in the A-frame. I come in, she's frantically ripping her clothes off, and she's like, God damn it, fucking Todd, douchebag. I said, what happened? And she said, well, Todd just winged my bag into the van and exploded my bear spray all over me and all my stuff. So she's in this panic to get changed and repacked so she can guide this trip. So I help her as best I can, and in a flash, she's out the door. She's gone, and I'm left with my thoughts. I hope she's okay. I hope these clients are easy. I hope she has a good trip. Did she see the pile? We'll have to deal with that another day. So 2 days later, I leave for my own 5-day backcountry trip with a friend. And unbeknownst to us, we were attempting a route that hadn't been done in more than 50 years. And over those 5 days, we got what we call Alaska'd. And what that means is whatever harrowing and terrifying experience you imagine the Alaska backcountry could offer, we experienced it. And during that time, all I could think about was Rachel. That squinty smile, that tangly hair. And I realized this summer fling, I really wanted it to be a thing. I wanted to have a life with Rachel. And I was genuinely concerned that I might not make it back to tell her that. But of course, I did. And the plane landed, I hopped in the van, and I rushed down to find her so I could tell her how I feel. And it wasn't hard to do because McCarthy's essentially one dirt road, and she was walking up with 2 girlfriends. So I pulled over and started peppering her with questions, only to get one-word, cold answers. How are you? Fine. What have you been up to? Nothing. Where are you going? Out. Can we talk later? Maybe. I look up at her friends. They've got their arms crossed, and they have these faint kind of snarls on their faces. And one of them turns to Rachel and says, "We should go, Rach." And Rachel looks at me and just says, "Bye," and walks away. So I dejectedly drive down to the guide's quarters, and I haul my gear to the wall tent that I used to store between trips. And as I get in, I see there's a pile of my stuff from the A-frame, my clothes, my books, everything. And on top, there's a note. And it just says, "This isn't going to work out. We should end it before we're more entangled." I was gutted. I couldn't understand what was happening. I couldn't compute what I was reading. So I had a very fitful night of sleep that night, and the next morning I went out early to try to find her and see if she would talk to me. And I tracked her down, and she agreed to have a conversation. We found a quiet spot on McCarthy Creek, and I just started rambling. I'm sorry, I didn't want to poop in your yard. I was sick. And she said, what are you talking? This is about you sleeping with the blonde girl. I thought, blonde girl? There's no, oh, the blonde girl. So the blonde girl was a van tour leader that I was schmoozing at the bar trying to network clients with, the common thing in the guide world. And after a few drinks, I walked her back to her tent, and that was that. What I didn't know is Rachel's friends were in the bar, and after I left, they finished the rest of the night from their imagination. Oh, Rachel says, "Oh, so you didn't sleep with the blonde girl?" I said, "No, absolutely not. I want to be with you. I want a life with you." And she said, "Oh my God, yeah, me too. That's why I was so upset. I'm falling for you, and I thought we really had something." I said, "Yeah, we do." And so we had this really excited moment of talking like what the next few months could look like. We could get a place together. We could travel. It was just full of possibility. And after a moment, the energy kind of settled, and we had this very peaceful moment just looking out over the creek, and the leaves were just starting to change colors. McCarthy Creek was just peacefully, burbling right at our feet, and there was this moment of still clarity after so much confusion. After a few moments, Rachel kind of cocked her head at me, and with that squinty little smile, she said, "Wait, you shit in my yard?"
Thank you, Bryan. Closing out our evening tonight is Betsy Funk. Betsy is a mom, wife, sister, friend with a passion for giving back. As a member of our collective community at large, her greatest pleasure is when she is making the world a better place. With a smile, a story, a bouquet, a hug, or a listening ear, she strives to inspire hope in the moments that we share. Please welcome Betsy Funk.
So when I was a child, we would watch the television, and some of the shows we watched were variety shows. And the people on variety shows would get on, and they'd sing and they'd dance. And the ones that I liked the most were the ones who did tricks. And my favorite trick was the guy who spun plates. He'd have this stick, and he'd get the plate going up there, and he'd get it spinning, and then he'd put it in this matrix. And as that matrix held the plate, he'd keep it going, and he'd get 10 or 12 plates going at one time. The music would swell. He'd pop that plate off with a stick, and he'd catch it, and he'd go 1, 2, 3 until he had all 12 plates. He'd take a bow. It was magical. So I'm sitting in my classroom during my planning period, and I've got plates spinning. I got plates in this corner, and plates down the hall, and plates above my head, and plates in the storeroom. I got them all going, and I'm hitting a point of too muchery. I'm stuck in too muchery, and I'm not sure how to handle it. because I know all of those plates are important for all of the people I care about. And the biggest plate right in the middle is my daughter, who's finishing off her first year of chemotherapy fighting cancer. And I know all the other plates can kind of wobble and I can keep them going. But that plate, that one has to stay spinning as long as it possibly can. And then I hear ding. And I look over at my computer, pause, and see who it is, and it's Sally. Sally's a good friend of mine who played with me in the symphony, and she decided she wanted to take a different tack, and she joined the Peace Corps. And so I hadn't heard from her in about 9 months, and there's this message. It says, "Hey, Betsy." I'm like, great, time to take a break from all my plate spinning and see if I can talk to Sally. So we have this conversation. How are you? I'm okay. How are you? We converse for a while, and then she pops a question. "Hey, Betsy, I got something to ask you." I go, "Yeah, sure. What is it?" She goes, "Would you come to Africa?" And I went, "Oh, what?" She says, "Well, I kind of have to teach, and I don't know how, and I'm scared. And would you come and spend 8 weeks in Africa teaching us how to teach?" I went, "Oh." And I thought about my plates. Well, they can wobble. But there was that big plate. I said, "Hang on." I picked up the phone, and I called Kelsey. I said, "Hi, Kels. I just got asked a wild question." "What is it, Mom?" I said, "Sally just asked me to go to Africa for 8 weeks." She goes, I said, what do you think?" She says, "Mom, that's awesome. You should go. I'll never go. You can come back and tell me the stories." So began my first trip overseas. I was a single mom and had very little money, recently married to my husband, and I knew that this was going to cost a lot, but I didn't know how much it was going to cost until I met with the very patient travel agent, and I met with a very kind banker, and I had my very tolerant new husband who said, "Okay." And about 2 weeks after I found out the price and got all the shots and the paperwork and all of the things that I didn't know you had to do to go to Africa, again, never been overseas, just had a passport, I went to the bank and I got $4,500, walked across the street, and there was a glass front on the travel agency, and I went to go to our appointed appointment to buy my ticket to Africa, and I walked right by the window, and I took my $4,500 and I walked around the block. Came back by the window, and she's looking at me. I kind of look at her, and I walk right by the window, and I head back around the block. What I'm thinking is, all the other plates can wobble, but can I leave Kelsey? Can I go? And what happens if it breaks? And then I think, as I'm on my 4th lap around the block, Kelsey told me to go. I need to bring her back the stories. So I go in, I hand her the money, and she says, "We're going to get you to Africa, Betsy." And I said, "Just be sure you get me home." And so I went to Africa. I went to Ethiopia for 8 weeks, and I worked with the Peace Corps. And during that 8 weeks, I saw the Great Rift Valley. I saw poverty. I experienced extreme generosity. Ethiopian eyes, women winnowing wheat in baskets in the morning light. I tasted, I smelled, I walked, I cried, I felt things that I've never felt before, and I ran away from all the things that I was doing at home to try to find a way to hold it together. And I taught, and I mentored, and I taught. And about 5 weeks in, I get this enlightened young man. His name was Jake. He came up to me, and he was like the poster child for Peace Corps, right? Beautiful teeth, hazel eyes, hair pulled back in a ponytail, chiseled jaw, bare feet. And he goes, "I've got an idea." And this is 5 weeks in, so I guess he liked me. We're going to take you in the hunt for the mother coffee tree. Now, this is the part of Ethiopia, which I didn't know before I got there, that they had a rainforest. And we're in the rainforest, and we're in the Kaffa region of Ethiopia. And those of you, please excuse me if you know this, I was not prepared for that. So we're in a jungle in the Kaffa region, and they believe in Ethiopia that that's where the mother coffee tree is, where all of our coffee addiction came from, is the Kaffa region of Ethiopia. And so he says, we're going to go and hunt of the mother coffee tree. I said, oh, okay. So we get on a bus, and they bring us to the top of a ridge, sort of looking down on the canopy of the rainforest, and drop us off because it's too dangerous to go farther. The Peace Corps volunteers, 3 of them have machetes. Jake is leading us with his bare feet, telling us, Mother Earth is calling me. I know where the coffee tree is. And I'm going, okay. And as I look out on the canopy of the rainforest, I see the mist rising in the morning light, illuminating it, not unlike the fall mist in the Flathead Valley that rises off the agricultural land as things wake up. And we drop down into the rainforest. And while I'm in the rainforest, down there looking up at the canopy, the light comes in streams and in sparkling spots coming down. It illuminates the Columbus monkey who's watching us in the tree with his big white face and his big bushy long tail and his black body, holding court in the jungle. It lights up the baskets that give the promise of sweet honey in the future. It lights up the monkeys that are chasing us and throwing figs at us. It also brings the mid-canopy to life. And in this mid-canopy, it was like there were stars sparkling everywhere you looked. White starred flowers illuminated by this morning light. They were the flowers of the coffee trees. Everywhere you looked, it was a sea of white coffee flowers, everyone holding the promise of a ripe cherry that would then be dried and brought to market in giant bags with giant Ethiopian eyes looking at you. And partway down this jungle journey where they're hacking away, we come to a ravine. And at this ravine, it's about 150 feet deep, there's a long log that goes across and it's slimy. And they say, Jake says, we have to cross the log. The mother coffee tree is calling me through my feet. And I look at the ravine, and I look at the log, I'm like, ooh, I'm twice your age? I don't think so. And the other thing that I don't tell them is when I go down to that log, I realize I can't cross that ravine because I might not make it home, and there's a plate that matters. And so I tell them, I don't think I can cross the log. I think I need to go home. And they say, okay, taking me back to the village, not knowing what I really mean is that I have 3 more weeks in Ethiopia, and I want to go home and be with my kid. They take me back to the village, and we've been invited to dinner at an NGO's house, and it's the Italian NGO, and it's a house. It's not a hut, and it's not injera and wat, and it's not a mat on the floor. It's a big table with a kitchen and a generator and a refrigerator and beer. And so we all sit down and they're drinking beer and they're drinking wine, and she brings out papaya and mango and bananas, and all of these things are sweet and tangy and wonderful, and they're eating it and they're excited. And then she brings out bread. Who has bread in Ethiopia? So she brings out loaves of bread, and they're pulling the pieces off, and they're layering the mango and the banana and the pineapple all on the bread. Then she disappears into the kitchen again, and she comes out, she says, the pièce de résistance, a giant chunk of Parmesan cheese. Now, we didn't have refrigeration, so some of these kids hadn't had cheese in over 2 years. I hadn't had it for 5 weeks, and I count cheese as a major food group in my life. So I was pretty excited, and so were the kids. And they grated this mound of cheese, and they started layering papaya, mango, banana, bread, cheese, 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 papaya, mango, bread. You get the picture? Then they start putting, when they run out of food, they put it on their hands. They're drinking beer. They put it on their arms, start licking it off each other's faces until they just fall down in a heap of sticky cheese and sugar. And in this place, they had these couches. And I'm watching these kids and I'm experiencing these young people, knowing that home is calling me. It's saying, you need to go back. You need to stop running away. And I watch these kids, and at the end of it, they go into this couch area, and like only mid-20s people can do, they're a tangle of arms and legs and bodies sort of laying on each other. And I'm heading back to my hut with Sally, and I think to myself, you know, all of this is amazing, and it isn't home, but it's beautiful.
Thank you, Betsy, and big thanks to all of you for coming out tonight to support live storytelling in Missoula. Huge thanks again to our American Sign Language interpreters, Bonnie Curian and Brandy Reinhardt. Thank you to everyone who donated during intermission. Thank you to our story sponsors, The Good Food Store and Exit Realty. Thanks to our accessibility sponsor, Parkside Credit Union, and to our stewardship sponsor, Marsh McClellan Insurance. Thank you most of all for being here tonight to support storytelling in our community. And thanks most of all to all of our storytellers. And come on up here when I call your name, please. I know some of you are over there. Rad Watkins, Marc Moss, Bryan Christianson, Lan Tawney, Hayley Glassic, Bryan Dalpes, and Betsy Funk. Oh, and Bridget Feerick. Thank you all so much. I hope you enjoyed yourselves. Please subscribe to the newsletter if you haven't. Follow us on all the social media channels. The next show is in January. The theme is self-evident. Look forward to seeing you all in January. Be safe out there. Love each other. Take care of yourselves. Thank you so much.